Hey guys, it's Rufus, and starting off with the first tip is repeaking. One problem that causes a lot of players to die is when they see someone, they'll shoot and peek away. Immediately, repeaking is a bad idea because in the short engagement you were just in, your opponent changed positions. Not much, but the change is enough to make you guess a bit where he is. And when you go into your cover, your opponent only has to hold an angle on where you'll peek. He knows exactly where you will peek. So if you peek, you're possibly going to have to rely on a flick in order to get the kill, whereas he only needs to make a micro adjustment. Also, if you repeak at the same head level, that's even worse because you're not only putting yourself at risk, but you're making yourself predictable. And so sometimes you just need to think about why you're peeking. I'm going to say this a lot, but intentionality is very important in Siege. That's very essential to getting better. Tip number 2 is peeking without intel, and I cannot tell you how much of an issue this is all the way to the Pro League level. And yes, even in Pro League, people make dumb decisions. But all you have to do is drone yourself in, or wait for someone else to drone. And as an attacker, the defenders are going to have a lot more intel on you than you do on them. So when you peek without intel, you are at a huge disadvantage. This is something that most players do, and you really need to try and pay attention to it, so you can get better. Don't peek until you know what you're peeking. If you take anything away from this, take that. This ties similarly with tip 2, but for number 3, it's peeking without a purpose. A lot of the times when people are peeking without intel, they're also peeking for no reason. As an attacker, you have a plan and you go by it in steps. In ranked it's more loose, but as you go you usually come up with your plan. Now say you're attacking the 3rd floor on Cafe, and you're trying to clear a pixel hold. Now you can peek the people all the way back in Cocktail, but there's no reason to. It's risky and it's not part of your current objective, which is to take cigar control. The person you should be peeking is the pixel player. Don't focus on what you don't need to focus on. You can't be risking your life, your utility, and possibly even a round just to get a pick on someone that doesn't matter in the grand scheme of the round. At least for you in that exact moment. And so a lot of players get focused on what they don't need to get focused on. When you roam clear as the attackers, you may not need to go for a full map clear, and because of this there may still be roamers in parts of the map. And while it is nice to clear those roamers, the nuisance of watching a flank can be quite easy compared to clutching a 4v5 if you're to go chase that roamer. I've seen people, they try and chase roamers, they overextend, they over roam clear, and it ends up collapsing onto the attackers. Because when you try and chase the roamers to clear them out, when you don't need to, you're kind of going off of a plan, you're improvising, and that's just not going to go well for the attackers. Next tip is not asking for help, and it sounds simple because it is. A lot of people forget to ask help mid-game, and when they die or fuck up, they blame their teammates for not reacting properly. But Siege is a game all about communication. If you can't properly communicate your needs in-game, you're not going to have those needs fulfilled. You can't expect your other teammates to know what you need. A lot of people just assume, and that's really bad. You cannot make assumptions. Making assumptions is what loses rounds and gets you killed. So a lot of people will get really focused and tunnel visioned in the game, and my only tip for really improving this is to just work on not being tunnel visioned. And I know that sounds not helpful at all, but this is kind of one of those skills that you just beat into your head daily. Just remind yourself intentionality, as mentioned earlier. A huge problem with a lot of players is hesitation. As I described in a previous video a while ago, how to not hesitate, if you want to see that link in the description below. But my best advice to deal with hesitation is to just act. And this might sound bad at first, but let me explain. You don't always have the time to evaluate which is the better choice. Sometimes you need to just take an opportunity, no matter how bad the situation may be. And there are times in Siege where you just have to push knowing you're going to die, like pushing into a doorway with 2, 3, 4 people watching it. Now, hesitation is extremely prevalent when retaking, and this is because a lot of players don't react well during the late rounds, so I'm going to try and help here. Now imagine you're on defense and the diffuser goes down. You need to kind of have a debrief with yourself. Quickly evaluate your situation and just think about what's going on around you. So, number 1, what utility do you have? Do you have any things like nitros? Do you have smokes, babes, impacts, anything that you can use to benefit yourself during a retake? Now, if you don't, where are your teammates positioned? Sometimes you will want to time retakes with your teammates, wait a moment, so you can be set up for refrags and improve the overall situation for your team. a big mistake when retaking is I see a lot of players, the diffuser goes down and they just push. They just immediately push. Because I know they don't have much time, but they don't use the time that they have to spare, if that makes sense. Like, even though the 40 seconds or so that you have is not a lot, you still have 30 seconds to get the retake accomplished. And so you don't always need to rush things, and waiting for your teammates can make it so much better for that retake success, because a refrag makes a huge difference. And so lastly, you need to question if you should push, and after you evaluate your teammates' positions, it's your turn to make that decision. I can't really tell you if it's right to push or not. Once again, your decision, so that's something you're going to have to figure out in game by yourself. So if you try to think like this during retakes, I can almost guarantee you will be more successful. The next tip is doing nothing with flank drones. Now, if you don't even use flank drones, here's a solid tip, because having intel on flanks is very powerful. But the real problem is that people will just throw down the drone and say that they set the flank. And I'm not saying you need to have your flank locked down the whole round, but try to check the flank consistently throughout a round. If you're not doing anything, check flank. It doesn't have to be long, like 3 to 10 seconds, even less. But there are a lot of times in a round where you're just waiting for some utility to be cleared, a roamer to be cleared, or whatever, so you can begin completing the next steps of your strategy. And so with this downtime, if you just do something productive, like check flank, your flank watch is going to be significantly improved. The efficiency of team is going to be improved. You're going to save a lot of time in a round, and it's going to significantly reduce the load off of your supports. Because if you didn't do this, your supports would have to, say Maverick has to go, Maverick took a wall. He gets off flank watch, he says, hey, can you watch flanks? And then that takes, 5 to 10 seconds of communication to go through, and then, you see, if someone just calls that they've got cams, it's much faster. And my final tip is not following behind your drones. And this is a simple one, but a lot of players have gotten into the habit of droning a room, seeing what's in there, and then acting. However, when it comes to actively pushing into a room, you should re-drone it so that first you know that anybody's actually in the room, and you can have the precise intel and improve your chances of winning a gunfight with that defender. Other YouTubers have said that one drone should equal 1 kill, but I disagree. That's completely unrealistic. When you're clearing rooms as the attackers, use one drone to evaluate the situation, figure out where the defender is, utility like rotations, castle barricades, ADSs, shields, etc. And then you react to clearing that utility, figure out where the defender now is, and then isolate him so you can get that frag. So if that makes sense, try to push behind a drone when you're going in for the frag. Because without intel, you'll probably lose the gunfight, and if you're not properly set up for a trade, which no matter how hard you try, you will not always be set up for a trade. That's just the truth. That's all I have to say for this video. If you learned something, give the video a like, and if you want to see more content like this, then subscribe. Toodles.